I guess. How's everybody doing with this wonderful, wonderful weather that we're having, huh?
Better than the hay.
Yeah. We'll see what this stuff freezes a couple of days. But I think most of you know me, but just in case, my name is Francisco Arriaga. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Soil Science at UW-Madison. I also have actually a big chunk of my appointment. It's with Extension. I'm a state specialist. In my area, it's in soil and water management. My training is what we call applied soil physics. And Becky wanted me to talk to you about Wisconsin soils for improved soil health and reducing compaction. So I'm kind of merging those two topics together. And again, for those of you that don't know me, in case you're wondering, I'm from Minnesota, okay? All right? I say that all the time now, Minnesota. All right, so I'd like to start off with what is soil health. So that's what we're kind of the framework of what I'm going to be discussing with you today. The way I see it, it's the ability of a soil to function in a way that's benefiting us, right? We're trying to grow crops, we're trying to make a living, right? And also, it's benefiting the environment. And if we think about it, if there's some benefit to the environment, it should be also benefiting us in some other ways. Who likes to go fishing here, right? Who likes to go fishing in a mud puddle? I don't think any of us do, right? So it's getting those holes working the proper way, the way that it's benefiting that crop production, but it's also benefiting water and all that kind of stuff, the drainage and all that kind of stuff. One thing I'd like to point out here is that every soil is going to be different, right? So if you compare a soil, from the central sands, the baseline or the soil, that soil is going to be very different to a soil down here, or soil from Columbia County or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, this is a slide I use for my students in short course. Some functions of soil. So the main one we're concerned here today, it's we're growing plants, we're growing crops. But very important for soil as far as the function is the recycling nutrients, right? Decomposition of the residues and all this kind of thing, and also mineralization of fertilizers and other things that we use. And it's a habitat for organisms, but these guys are very important, critical, because they are the ones that are helping break down the organic waste, crop residues, and helping recycle nutrients and keep that soil going. And I sometimes throw out that soils are alive. If you got a piece of soil that is not alive, that's not soil, that's dirt, right? And then last but not least, and this one that I like to study for some degree, some degree, it's a system for water supply, right? Where are our plants getting the water? Getting it out of the soil. The soil is a tremendous reservoir for water storage, and that's where that plant water available comes from. And then it's also a way that we can help purify and clean out waters. And then if you're an engineer, you use it for building stuff, but we're not going to be looking at that. Apologize, I have a little lozenge and I've been kind of fighting a little cold here for the last few days. So another way to look at soil health is that when we look at soils, what do we talk about usually? We talk about physical properties, if we have a compaction problem or something like that. If we have a issue with fertility or pH or something in our field, where we talk about our chemical properties in the soil. And then a lot of times we know there's the biology, but it's so pesky, we kind of throw it in the background and we don't think much about it. And that's kind of the way I was trained, as a soil scientist. But now we're realizing with the soil health, that soil health is actually that intersection. We cannot really break down and decompose these guys. All those properties are working together to have a proper functioning soil. And this is what becomes a problem. There's a lot of these soil health assessments now that are out there, and they do have some value to them, especially if you're comparing management side by side or something, changes that you're making to a field over time. They can be useful, but we're not to the point where we can get a recommendation like we do with the nutrient report, right? If you send a sample for a routine soil test, you get a report that say, hey, your potassium is low, your phosphorus is low, your pH is off. This is what you need to do. We don't have that recommendation. And that comes from decades of research behind it. We're not there with soil health. That's what we want to go, and I'm hoping that in kind of not too far future, that's where we're going to go. But there's still use for those assessments. So the issue becomes is, what do we measure? What are these indicators? And things like that. So having that in mind and thinking about this, And everybody's coming out now with these, exercise programs and all that kind of stuff, right? So I came with my 3-step program for soil health in Wisconsin. And if you call within the next 20 minutes, you get a 2-for-1. You get a twofer, right? All right, so I kind of try to simplify this from my, I guess, narrow-minded soil scientist view. And I think making it something that makes sense, and I think that it could be applied, tomorrow if you wanted to. So 3-step program. So my first step is, first thing, if your fertility is off, that's the first thing you need to address, right? And we have a lot of data about this, and we know a lot about this, and I'm not a soil fertility person, but this is all I'm going to say about it. So it is important for crop production to begin with soils that are properly managed, and you have from the fertility standpoint. So if you don't have that squared away, that should be your first priority in my view. And if anything, if you're looking at fertility, I would argue, and a lot of people would, that pH would be one of the #1 things you want to address. Because the pH, or the acidity of the soil, dictates the availability to the crop for all the other nutrients in the soil, okay? So critical, pH. And it also affects a lot of biological functions, so the nitrogen fixation by legumes, those nodules, pH, if your pH is off, they're going to be affected. The biology's not going to like it in your soil. Any questions about this? All right. Step 2, pretty easy, right? Step 1, we're over with that one. Step 2, increase or maintain your soil carbon. And this is going to depend, right? If you might be at a level, your field, a particular field or soil might be at a level that, it probably has adequate carbon, then, it might not be realistic to increase it. In Wisconsin, if you look at the average organic matter for soils, it's about 3%, 3.1%, just to give you a frame of reference. So there's certain soils that you can probably pick it up to 4% and maybe a little bit higher. Other soils that maybe, 2% or even lower, depending if they have a lot of sand. That would be more realistic for those soils. Another point I want to make here is that it's not just about the total amount of organic matter, and this is something that I'm at fault for advocating all the time too. Total organic matter in the soil, it is important. But the other piece to it is that not all organic matter in the soil is the same and behaves differently, has different properties. Organic matter, there's like over 10,000 different compounds when we talk about organic matter in the soil, so we just say organic matter very simplistic. But it's a very complicated piece. And I think the reason why we try to simplify it as soil scientists did is because it's so complicated. So it's not just about the total amount, but also the variety of that organic matter, or the organic carbon you have in the soil. And so the example, and think about the organic matter, what we're trying to do is we're trying to feed the biology of that soil. That's what those microbes are using in the soil. It's the energy source for the soil, if you will. And one example I make about this, or kind of an analogy, relates to, you guys know that McDonald's now offers breakfast all day long, right? I think Burger King came with a different offer to counteract McDonald's, where they are offering hamburger all day long. So imagine you go to Burger King in the morning for breakfast and you order a Whopper. Then you go back for lunch, get another Whopper. Then you go back for supper, for dinner, and get another Whopper. And you did that today, you did it tomorrow, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, several months. What's going to happen? You're feeding yourself that same organic matter. What's going to happen?
You're high cholesterol.
You're going to have high cholesterol. Your health is not going to be very good. Some people actually say you become a Whopper yourself, right? So, not good. So it's kind of the same thing. When we're having let's say a continuous corn rotation, and it's just corn and corn and corn and corn and corn and corn, that's all the organic matter that soil is seeing. You're not throwing in there, alfalfa, or throwing in there some wheat or some soybean that has different residues. That biology is not as active, it's not as well functioning. So when we look at organic matter, there's a lot of stuff in there. So here we're just looking at just the solid part of soil. So most of the soil is really going to be that sand, silt, and clay. That's what we call the mineral. And a small sliver, here it's just generalized for all sorts of soil, 1 to 6%. And then when we look at just the organic matter, a good chunk of that is a stable organic matter, or humus in the soil. I had to stop and think about it because a lot of times I say hummus. That's not it. That's what you put in the cracker, right? All right, so, and this is what we want. The end product that we want is the stable organic matter. That's what's creating that nice earthy smelling soil, you know, it's helping those aggregates in the soil, all those kind of things are good things in the soil. But where are we starting from? We're starting from crop residues, manure. I think manure is awesome for soil. I think it's a great thing. We're starting from this material, and then we get the living things in the soil, which, you know, comprise just a very small fraction, working on these guys, breaking this down. These guys themselves, as they're going through their life cycle, they're going to die too, and they're going to become some residue in the soil, and they're going to be other microbes, they're going to decompose those, right? And then they're going to be working on that, and then we're going to have the stable organic matter, that it's what really we're looking for in the soil. That's kind of the energy in the soil. And then all these living critters in the soil, there's a great variety of them. You know, there's a good chunk of fungi, bacteria, actinomycetes, yeast, algae, protozoa, all sorts of different things in the soil. Now, one comment I want to make, I said that they're, in general, they're a small proportion of the total mass of a dry soil. And we typically don't think about these guys unless we have some kind of problem with a pest, right? But I want you to kind of think about, you know, change the way we think about microbes in the soil, because the bulk of them are actually beneficial or neutral. They're not affecting our crops, but they're beneficial for the soil. And I guess the other analogy I throw here for this one is, imagine you're a teacher and you have 30 kids in class.